Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our fifth session in our series here about kind of navigating America's Seed Fund and knowing more about SBIR, STTR, and deciding if it's right for you, if it's right for your business, if it's right for kind of the next stages of your innovation. So last week we talked about developing commercialization content and what that actually includes. Like when we think commercialization content, when we look at commercialization content, what does that actually mean? And a big thing that we discussed last time is, when it comes to commercialization, your market is a really big driver. It tells us about how many people out there would be able to buy this, what the environment is. But we also discussed the fact that when it comes to commercialization, your customers is really the key factor. If you don't know the customer, then you don't know your market. You don't know your business model. You don't know what you're actually going to be able to sell. You don't know what value you provide. So your customer is something that you really have to almost do some soul searching and figure out. And there's an actual process that is called customer discovery and customer validation when you go through that. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is just kind of what does customer discovery actually mean? What does that look like? And kind of how do you work through some of the mechanics of that? So in today's session, we're just going to really quickly kind of define what is a customer. We talked about it briefly last session when we talked about commercialization content, but going to take a little bit of a deeper dive today. And then we're going to talk about how to find those customers. Because once you know who your potential customer is, well, then you got to go out there, you got to find them, you got to talk to them, you got to find out information from them. And that finding out information is actually called interviewing. And we're going to talk about why customer interviews are a bit different than what people really think about when they think about interviews. And then finally, we're going to talk about kind of keeping customers in the loop. So what does that process actually looks like? Kind of what do you need to know about it? And ultimately, what's the benefit that can be gained from that? But first off, let's actually define customers just a little bit more. So when we define customers, again, customers are the ones who purchase your product. They're the people that are actually going to be paying for it. For a lot of people that work in things like health technologies, biomed, the kind of a lot of research heavy areas, the person that gets the most benefit from the product is usually actually not the customer. They're what's referred to as an end user. You see this a lot of time in things like drug therapies. The person that's actually, receiving the benefit, going through the therapy, taking the medication, taking the intervention to solve the disease, solve the health disparity, whatever it is, they're not the ones that actually purchase it. The one that actually purchases it is, an insurance company or the doctor's office that's providing it. They are the actual customer when it comes to kind of defining the customer, because it's not just the person that purchases whatever you're trying to sell, the person that purchases your product, but it's also the person that's actually receiving a benefit from it. There has to be something that they gain in order for them to really be considered a customer. And your customer is really kind of the starting point of knowing your business. Who your customer is and why they're your customer will actually drive the market. What is your real market opportunity? What is your ability to go out there and sell? It drives your business strategy. What are the next steps you need to take? How do you get into the marketplace? What are the channels you take? Everything around that is actually really defined by who your customer is. It also drives that product development pathway. So the things that you need to make sure that your product does, the kind of items, how it functions, some of the functionality of it, the features, the benefits, the whirly gigs, the whatever you want to name it. That's all defined by who your customer is and what they need, what they have to have. And it's really at the heart of it when it comes to your business. The customer is the foundation for all of the activities and everything you are trying to build your business around. They are the foundation that you build up a successful business. Yes, your customer. They drive everything. And really, you need to know as much about this persona as humanly possible. And persona is something you will often hear when people talk about customer because they're not saying, Billy Bastion of 300 Shazam Drive is going to be their customer. It's an actual type of person. It's somebody that is in a specific job position for a specific type of organization. Or it's somebody that suffers a specific type of problem when dealing with a specific type of, need. It's really defined by what they are as a group rather than what they are as an individual. And so that's why customers are actually personas. You're trying to sell to a swath of people, not just a singular person. You can't make a business selling something to one person and that's it. Unless they're going to pay multiple millions of dollars for your one product. Now, when we think about customers, though, one thing to kind of reinforce is that people are customers based off of what we typically refer to as a need. Something that is either being unmet or is being insufficiently met. You're addressing a need. You're addressing this happens and this sucks. I know that this can be solved. Or I've seen this happen and I've been impacted by this. Really, the need is kind of that driver for why are you creating this solution, this product, this innovation that you are creating? What's the actual problem that it solves? Does it save time? Does it save energy? Is it cost savings? What is it that is actually going, okay, well, this is what happens here, and this is how I can fix that. And so when you're thinking about that need and how you're going to define who benefits from that need being solved, which again is your customer, really just kind of think back to what prompted you to create this product. Besides money, of course, money's great, but that's not a need you can meet for your customer. But what's the thing that you said that you looked out there and said, this just needs to be solved. This bums me out, or it impacts the way I do things, or it impacts the, people I love and the people around me, or whatever it is that was that crystallizing factor that you went, I have to solve this. This is something that needs to be addressed. This is something that needs to be solved. And kind of along with that need, just where do you see it going in the future? Is this something that can be expanded upon? Is this something that can create, a depth and a breadth, even something like a product line, something you can sell to multiple people? And how do you expand on that need? Will it have to be kind of sole sourced where it's just a singular thing and then maybe you pivot it, maybe you go through a redesign, maybe you do something kind of new to it and all of a sudden you're actually being able to solve multiple problems? Or is it something that you can add a specific functionality or expand upon something? That's what you actually want to start looking at when you try to match that need to what you can actually deliver and the value that it actually brings. Because customers are customers because you give them a benefit. And the benefit is what they gain by solving that need. It has to be something tangible that they receive. A lot of times this is actually referred to as a value proposition. It fills a gap in operations. It solves some issue that actually impedes upon their ability to do work. There's something that they value out of that transaction and that it brings to them as a benefit. And so they're willing to pay for it. That's what, when you're thinking about customer and validating that they're a customer, You really are trying to validate that you're solving a need for them and you're providing a benefit. You're providing a value proposition because value propositions are very much linked to specific customer personas. Different kinds of people are going to get different kinds of benefits. That doesn't mean that person A is your customer, but person B is not. Persons A and B might be your customer, but there's going to be something different between them that they get out of it. Um, think about it as if you had a pass-through operation where you produce something and then you produced a new type of peanut butter and Whole Foods started carrying it. Well, your customer is not the person that's buying the peanut butter. They're Whole Foods customer. Your customer is Whole Foods, but Whole Foods buys your peanut butter because they gain something. And then in turn, they sell it to their customers because they gain something. And each time you look at that chain about what is the gain there, what is being brought to the table, the benefit, that is that value proposition. So you can have kind of nested value propositions, but there's always going to be a core one. And that core one is very much going to be related to who is your actual customer versus who's a beneficiary, who's an end user, who is a discriminator. That is kind of when you're doing these exercises and going through this discovery process, some stuff you need to keep in mind. And while we talk about value proposition, I know I mentioned this in the last one, but always worth repeating every single time. Price is never a core value proposition. It is never the tentpole that stands up. It can be a decision leader where your product is kind of sought more because you are cheaper than the competition, but just because something is cheaper does not mean that's a value. One thing, because if it's so much cheaper than the competition, issues of quality come into effect because we're human. We think, well, nobody else is going to make this that much cheaper without there being something radically wrong with it. Or if you are in a business to business or a business to industry type, price is never a value proposition or never a core one because you don't know how much it would actually cost them to implement your solution. Let's say you design a new type of manufacturing process and you go, I can save you $100,000 a year. But how much is it going to cost them to actually implement that manufacturing process? Do they need to retool lines? Do they need to retrain staff? Do they need to do X, which is almost always going to be a yes. You might save them $100,000, but to actually implement your process might cost them $200,000. So that's why price alone can never be a core value proposition. Again, it can be an indicator, it can be a leader, it can be a tipping point, but it is never a sole just tentpole when it comes to values and benefits. So now that you've started thinking about, well, who's my actual customer? What am I actually solving? What's that need I'm addressing? And what does the benefit I actually bring? Well, now you have to actually test that out. And you test that out by going out there, finding customers, and actually talking to them. But it can be very, very difficult to find your customers, particularly if you're not even certain who your customer is. And the best kind of piece of advice on how do you find customers, how do you start to identify them, go to where your customers live. Where do they buy things? Where do they actually buy solutions? If it's someplace that you can be, this is trickier for government customers because you can't just go on someone's base, but they're often at things like industry events. So go where they are, talk to them in their environment. When I have given like demonstrations on how to do customer interviews in the past, I've always kind of set up a story. And a good one to do is if you deal with the public as a customer in any fashion, go where they're buying like things. If you have some sort of, new tent that you're developing, I don't know, something going to be very radically different with the tent, go to a sporting goods store, go to Walmart, hang out in that area. See who's buying stuff. Ask them some questions. Act like a hobbyist. Try to find out more. That's what we actually mean when we say go to where people live, is where are they buying stuff? Where are they working? How are they kind of coming up against this problem that you're solving for them? And go to where that happens. See them in that environment. And the second best way is to actually start to use networks of networks and things like groups to connect to them. LinkedIn has a bevy of industry groups and industry types out there. There are specific, working groups for things, or there are subcommittees for things, or, you know, industrial engineers have this type of group and this type of group and this type of group. Go on there and join those and start to kind of see who's active, who's actually posting about stuff, who's talking about issues, and ping them. Say, hey, I'd like to actually talk to you a little bit about this. Or, this is something I'm also interested in. Can I have a quick conversation with you? The 6 degrees of separation here is an actual real thing. A lot of times you can find connection points to people, customers, and potential partners even that you never knew you had. See who's connected to who. Do you know somebody that actually does work with Raytheon sometimes? Well, maybe they can actually give you a connection into Raytheon if you're selling or if you're creating something that Raytheon might be interested in. So rely on your network and rely on your network of networks. Find those contacts who may be able to get you an in for that target. And once you find them, ping them. Ask if they can actually sit down with you, have a quick conversation, go over a couple of things. Remember, this isn't a sales call. You're not trying to sell a product to them because you don't even know if they're your customer yet. You don't know if you actually are solving the problem that they have. You don't know enough about the problem they face. You don't know enough about what they need to solve that problem. So you don't know if they are going to be your customer. So you can't sell them something because technically, even if you have a product ready to go, you don't know if that product is right for them. So this is actually not a sales call, but it's like a spy session. It's for data gathering. You're trying to find out more. You want to find out about their industry and the issues they face. Or maybe you're researching that problem area and you know that that's an issue for them. And you want to find out more about the, factors behind it or factors behind the problems that they face. Or you're also, suffering from the same issues and you're looking into solutions and want to find out more about how others might use them, or you want to find out more about some of the things that are out there and some of the things that they claim to solve. Maybe it is one of those things where you see that there's competition out there, others are doing something similar to what you're doing, but they're not doing it as well. So you want to find out what is it that they're not doing great enough. And say, well, I'm looking at this and I'm not sure if this is actually the right product for me. I know you use it. Can I ask you about it? Particularly for that one, though, kind of be wary of the way that you approach that because the wrong wording can set it in somebody's mind that they're about to sit in on a sales pitch. And nobody wants to do that. I see those numbers pop up my phone and immediately look up the area code, go, nope, this is probably spam. This is probably a sales pitch. Immediately decline. It's going to happen a lot. But just be kind of open about it. Be honest about your intentions. Just, I want to find out more. I want to actually learn from an expert. People value that. They go, well, I must be a leader in my field. People are actually asking me for my opinion. That's a really great thing, and it opens up a lot of doors. But also, calls should be brief. So if somebody is willing to schedule a call for you, don't schedule it for more than 30 minutes. If they want to give you more, awesome. That is great. If they give you less, that's still great. People are busy. And you also want to keep, really good relations with these people because if over the course of you talking to them, you find out that they might actually be a customer, well, you want to be able to reach out to them in the future and say, hey, regarding that conversation we had, I think I have something that, will solve these issues. It does X, Y, and Z, which you said are necessary for you to be able to do your job well. Can we actually talk about this? Can I, kind of almost give you a sales pitch around this? So you never want to leave them with a bad taste in their mouth after talking to you, because if they are going to be your true customer in the future, then you want to keep that dialogue open. You want them to actually be interested in what you say, be interested in what you can deliver, and why you might actually be able to deliver something to them. But so let's talk about kind of that setup. So now that you've reached out to them, now that you hopefully had a connection point, how do you actually set up that interview and set up that process? Um, One thing, if you schedule an interview with them, treat it almost like a job interview. You want to be, on time, early as possible, thank them for their time. Even if you ultimately think that it's not going to be a fit for you, think that they didn't give you good answers, again, keep those bridges alive and keep them actually well established. And another thing that you want to do, particularly in these kind of fact finding sessions, take notes throughout. Anything that's going to be this is actually really going to impact how I design. This is something that is going to be a large leader in what the decisions I make in the future. Write it down. I've often worked with people where I see them taking notes and they apologize for it. Don't apologize for taking notes. People like how you take notes. It's actually a really good psychological trick. They feel that you are valuing their input. They feel that you are valuing the things that they say, the time that you are being able to give to them, because you're sitting there and you're so wrapped in attention, you're taking notes, you're really paying attention to what they say. They go, my opinion's worth something here. And oftentimes they're going to provide kind of more responses. They're going to be willing to dig more into information. They're going to want to talk just that little bit more with you and make sure that you understand where they're coming. And again, just kind of if you are meeting them in their space instead of an interview. So if you're at like something like a trade show and talking to somebody in a specific industry or a specific field, or with a specific governmental agency, always be alert of the time that you're actually taking, or even if you are to take the advice and meet them in the aisles of Walmart or wherever you're actually finding them, that they may be a customer for you. Always be kind of just cognizant of the environment around you and look for those hidden clues where they start to look fidgety, they start to, tap their foot or something. They got somewhere else to be. Just go, you know what, this was a great conversation. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day. And even at things like trade shows, if you see a line starting to stack up behind you, ask them, hey, I'd like to really dive in deeper with this or about this with you. Can I give you my card? Do you have a card? I want to actually connect with you again. Will you be here tomorrow? Make them aware that you know that their time is valuable and you want to still talk to them, but you also want to be cognizant of how much more can I actually get from this person. But so that's enough of the actual stuff and about how you work through the machinations of trying to get an interview with somebody that might be a customer. Now, let's actually talk about interviewing customers. Let's talk about actually speaking to people that might be your customer in the future. Because the first thing is we call it customer interviews. And that sets up a bad expectation in a lot of people's minds. It's not really an interview. It's not the traditional, you see 60 Minutes or Dateline or whatever, and it's not that type of interview. You're not sitting them down and, firing questions at them and waiting for them to stop talking so you can ask the next question. All you're trying to do is find out more about their needs, their habits, and what they would actually benefit from. And because you're trying to validate the value proposition and you're trying to learn about what they do and how they do it so that you can develop a business model around it. At the heart of it, interviewing customers is about finding out two different things. And the two different things you find with customer interviews and the ultimate purpose of a customer interview is data and insights. And data is what they tell you. Data is their answer. Data is, I do X thing, or we have Y problem out in the field, or, Z issue is our biggest headache. That's a data point. They're just telling you a fact about, maybe it's their interpretation of something, but it is still a fact in their mind. And so you take it as a fact. Now, the insight is very much like what you would do during something even like a proposal preparation. The insight is what you do with that fact. I mean, we talked about that aspect before and doing things like sourcing and links and kind of creating a platform of knowledge that you build off of to talk about how your innovation works. In a customer interviews, you kind of do something very similar. They give you a piece of data. So they give you one of those links. They give you something. And then you're able to take that piece of data and you make a hypothesis about it. You make a theory. That insight is what you actually do with that data point because it's how it informs you. It's how it informs your business process. It, changes the flow of questions. It goes, okay, well, they've actually told me this. I wanted to take the conversation in, direction A, but because they actually told me this, I really need to spin this off into a different direction. I really want to find out more. Dive in more into that thing they just told me. So that's what we mean when we say like data and insights. Data is the thing that they tell you. The insight is what it actually does to inspire your operations, to inspire what you are going to be able to do in the future. It really allows you to kind of visualize that value proposition that you can bring to the table. Now, the structure, again, is a little bit different because it's not like that typical interview. You want them to be free form and free flowing and really just to act like a conversation. It's just you and this person talking. And y'all are talking shop, but you're not digging into profit margins and gross revenues and the typical business stuff. You're just finding out more about them, finding out more about their operations, how they do things. So you don't want to walk in with a list of prepared questions. It's fine to walk in with some bullet points on, I would like to find out X, Y, and Z. And walk in with that thought, that idea. And then how you ask them things, how you kind of spin things towards getting to X, Y, Z. Well, that's just part of the interview process. So you ask kind of probing and leading questions, and you really pay attention to those answers because that dictates where you can actually not worry about this issue because it's not really a problem that affects them. Or you can actually dive deeper down into the thing they just said. If they tell you that when they're, operating in the Permian Basin and a dust storm rolls in and they have to shut down operations for the next 36 hours, you go, that's a big factor. That if I could protect, oil rigs or drilling or whatever from dust storms, that's something that they would actually be able to have a huge benefit from. So then you dive down into it and wow, 36 hours is a long time. How does that impact y'all, on a monthly time scale or on a year? And then, well, the dust storms, where's the actual thing that's happening there? I mean, I thought that the rigs were able to operate just fine. Is it that it gums up the works? Give them something that'll tease the rest of the conversation. Because good customer interviewing is just kind of playing a really good game of psychology. And A big thing with questions, though, is a lot of people will fall into just a habit of asking those yes no style questions. And that really serves zero purpose when it comes to customer interviews because a yes no question, true, it can give you data. But what's the insight that's going to come from that? All you got was a data point. You know one thing, but what can you actually flip that into? What can you change that into? How does that actually affect your thoughts with going forward? That's why it's so kind of crucial and critical to really walk in to these conversations with a very open mind. Don't try to validate preconceived notions. Don't try to just say, okay, I need them to have this issue, so I'm going to do everything I can to drive them towards that issue, drive them towards that problem. Because if it's only a problem that they think of when they're in front of you, it's not really a problem that's going to guide their decision on buying things. It's not a problem that they're going to recognize that needs to be solved. So that's why I always walk in very open and just very eager to learn more about them. And kind of getting into a little bit of the technique here. So, one, again, really ask those open-ended questions to walk in with a good frame of mind. But when it comes down to it, there are four key things that you want to find out about when you're talking to people that might be your customer, when you're doing one of these interviews. And because they really do shape what you're going to do in the future and how you're going to do it. One of the key things is just really the problem. So, what is the most critical aspect of the problem that they actually face? People will have lots of different problems. And even if you tell them, I can solve this problem for you, well, how are you going to solve it? What's the thing that's actually driving it? If I told you I had a certain type of medical concern that millions of people talk about, well, you know, solve that problem for me. Is that actually the thing that you need to address? If it's an injectable, I actually care about that.
Hey,
Is it
Dell.
something that's my fault? Yes, I do.
Sorry, your audio is kind of cutting out.
Oh, let me see if I can move it a little bit closer. I'm working on my laptop today.
Got
Is
it.
that a little bit better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Um, so, that tells you more about the problem. And then find out how they're currently solving it and what are the gaps, because that tells you where you're going to be able to provide that competitive edge, that advantage, that discriminator that people are actually going to buy something for you. And then you also want to know about how they make purchasing decisions, because if there's going to be something that stands in the way for you to be able to sell to them, that's something you need to know about. So who influences, who almost controls the purse strings? How often do they try to find alternatives? That tells you if they have, purchasing cycles. You're trying to find out about the things that are really going to affect your overall business and your operations in the future. And another big thing with kind of the customer discovery process is the customer part of it is a bit of a misnomer because you want to find out more about the almost customer map, not just customers. So, influencers, decision makers, competitors, channel partners. It's a really good idea to talk to anybody that plays within that ecosystem and is part of that space. Because people oftentimes just kind of think through problems and they may give you the things that actually affect them. But there's a bunch of key things that we just kind of take as second nature and we go, well, it happens and I deal with it, but everybody knows about that. Do they though? So when you're trying to kind of dive into that, that's why it's really good to talk to other people that are in that same space, that are within that section of the ecosystem, because they're going to be able to provide you a little bit more about the problem and how it's actually addressed than maybe your customer can even think about. And then ultimately, you're going to get a result from this. So you want to kind of collate everything together and categorize. You know, you want to be able to rack and stack and be able to say, well, we have things in these areas. We need to inform the future of our business. You know, answers on what the product needs to do, answers on how the customer purchases solutions. Take everything that you've been told, map it to someone that has told you that, and then think about how does that affect me in the future? Because as you continue to grow, as you continue to try and get into new markets, to try and serve new customers, you're going to want to refer back to this information. And ultimately, it's all about kind of informing customers. We have a couple of slides that actually just kind of dig down into this and talk about why this is important. But Cindy invited a speaker today to talk with us about kind of their SBIR story and kind of their pathway for customer discovery. So I think it'd be a lot better to hear from them. So we have Isar from NALU Scientific, who is on today to talk with us about how NALU Scientific went through their process and what their SBIR did for them. Isar, do you want to come on and kind of spend a few minutes talking about that?
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we got you.
How are you doing, Dal? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while. Just a quick background, we did work with Dell, I think 3 or 4 years ago, actually, for one of our NIH SBIRs, and we managed to actually get that funded. So thank you, Dell, and you and your team for helping us out back then.
Always happy to be a part of the ecosystem, Isar.
Great. Yeah, I can give a quick uh, introduction about what we do. My name is Isar Mustafanejad, founder and CEO at NALU Scientific. We are a Hawaii-based small business. We've been in operation since 2010. And I can share one slide real quick just to show what we do, just to set the stage in terms of our background, if that's okay, Dell.
Yep, let me disable my share and enable sharing for you. What? Okay, you should be able to share now, Isar.
All right. Is this coming through okay?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so our main expertise is integrated circuit design or microchip design and development. We found a niche in high-speed analog to digital converters for special sensing applications, mainly for scientific and government use cases. That allowed us to get our first SBIR to develop our microchips and then develop the hardware that goes with it from printed circuit boards, firmware and software, and the data processing suite and software that goes with it. And also we have scientific, advisors and staff members in our team that have PhDs in physics and electrical engineering that help us connect with the interface with the customers better. We're in Honolulu, Hawaii. We have been mainly working with the Department of Energy. We've transitioned 5 phase 1 and phase 2 essentially SBIRs into commercialization now. We have parts and technologies that we're selling currently, and we have customers that are paying for our special hardware and also services. That work has allowed us to get 3 US patents on our technology. And one of them was actually issued yesterday, so that's exciting. And we're hoping to get more based on the portfolio of the programs that we have going on right now, and also get about over $2.5 million in non-SBIR sales of, thank you, Cindy, of products and services. And that has been growing more since we have a distributor now that we're working with to sell our products. So that I can just park it there. This is taken from a slide that I prepared for another conversation at a different place, but it kind of gives you the picture about our team. And Dale, I kind of want to make this a little bit more interactive, if you're okay. because I missed the first 20, 25 minutes. I was on a different call and took me a little bit to get on. So if you can give me some context here, if there's any specific questions, that I can kind of build on that and take it from there, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think a good thing to talk about, Isar, since y'all have had so much success now with SBIR and actually commercialization, and you have a really kind of novel and unique product out there that really kind of answers to a niche. How did y'all go about through with your customer discovery process, and whatever I think are some kind of key things you learned when you were talking to your customers that maybe had an effect on your operation and how you were trying to kind of create your business and create your product?
Excellent point. Yeah, we definitely stepped into it with some assumptions. And a lot of them were not right, unfortunately, or fortunately. So it's been an iterative process for us. Our first goal was to really get funded, and that requires its own customer discovery. Because in our case, we are in deep tech and hard tech. So getting funding from non-dilutive funding sources was a bit challenging. Sorry, getting funding from equity rounds was a bit challenging at the beginning, just because of the intensive amount of capital that's needed for companies like us that are in hardware development. So we knew that we need to go to the government for funding. And then it was a matter of finding the right program within the government and the right entry point. And so now our customer discovery shifted from, the end customer discovery to this kind of bridge customer that would be interested in our project, and we could solve a real problem for their user base right away. Now, as Dale might have mentioned, usually the way it works with government and SBIR programs, the program managers or the program office that's running that within an agency is not the end user of that technology that's being developed. So first we needed to find out what the needs of that program office is, and then how that translates to the needs of the end user, because we need to be able to connect the dots and talk about both of them. In our case, it was Office of Science, the Department of Energy Office of Science, that had needs for special types of microelectronics for radiation detection, essentially, at some of their advanced scientific facilities. So we started talking to the program managers. They were available via email. The first thing that they had out there was a call for proposal. They had the topics, they had information about the topics, they had references to articles, publications about what they were looking for. So before even getting to an interview with them, or interactive mode with them, we were able to kind of get as much information as possible just to understand what the frame or the mindset of the customer was. We knew what we wanted to develop, kind of, vaguely, not exactly, just because we were good at that and we thought we could do that as usual, because we're a tech company and our tech people, including myself, had an idea of what we were going to make. But we kind of put that through the test by emailing these program managers and before pitching to them. And I had gone through a startup program actually before that, and that was back in 2016. Gone through a startup program before that to be able to figure out these things about customer discovery. And Dell has probably mentioned that you never ask the ice cream question, like, do you like ice cream? And everybody says yes. And that's then you figure, okay, well, so everybody wants ice cream, but that's not true. So we kind of put our assumptions to the side. We started asking questions about who the end users are potentially for this technology, how this could become commercialized, because we knew that program manager was going to be just a bridge, essentially funder for us to get to through our R&D. And then in the meantime, we also put in nuggets about our capabilities, what we can make, just to get them interested. It wasn't like we were just coming out with no ideas. We had some ideas. So that really opened the door for them to put us in touch with some of their end users within national lab community, because Department of Energy Office of Science has a fairly large SBIR program, but a lot of that is catered towards the needs of facilities that they're operating. So that opened the door for us to get in direct contact with a director at a national lab that could be potentially the user or a customer, sorry, the user of our technology. And then from there, we had interviews with them. And so getting that, chain of command figured out was critical for us. Setting up interviews, conference calls with them. And, we had enough that was interesting for them to get on the phone with us. We had enough technological background and ideas that was interesting for them so that we get on the call with us. And, kind of one thing led to another. And we were working with people that were very technically minded. They really they had technical expertise. So that also created an additional challenge for us because we weren't talking with business people that would just make decisions based on business situations, but they were also very technically savvy, and their job was to also make sure all the technical criteria is going to be met. So we had to kind of get to it with both angles on the technical and business propositions.
I want to follow up on something you just said there, Isar, because I think it's really important for the audience to know about. You talked about there's that difference between when you were talking to people that were in the technical space versus the business space and how that kind of drove. Like, what were some of the things that you saw were maybe issues you had speaking with the technical audience versus the business audience, or ways you had to frame questions, or ways you had to find out more about the problems? And what do you think that did for your process and your team's kind of goals and business decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question. The technical audience is different. They have expertise in one area and they're very good at what they do. Let's say somebody has a PhD in electrical engineering or physics and has been working on solving that same problem that we're trying to innovate in for the national lab and been doing that for 25 years, right? So how can we kind of get the trust of this person to kind of open to us and tell us what the problems that they have are, right? And that is very challenging. So at times it may look like we're going to compete with them, or they're going to compete with us, or so then how do you even have a dialogue with that kind of person, right? Or that kind of entity or technical group within the customer group. It's not very easy, actually. It's very difficult. And so there are some barriers that we very early on figured that we need to get over. And one of them is just, first of all, we're here to learn. And then, not here to sell them on a technical idea or a business idea or anything, right? And that really put a lot of differences aside. And now they felt that, okay, well, this guy is not here to sell me anything. In fact, he actually doesn't have a product, right? Or he doesn't have a process or a product or anything or a package to sell me. So that kind of relaxes a lot. And then we had enough street credit, we had published something, or our name was somewhere, so that yeah, they knew that we knew enough technical material that it would be a good use of their time to talk to us, even if it was like a 25-minute conversation, because these people are very busy. So getting to the punchline of what their problems are is essential for them. So yeah, I think that was one of the differences, that having enough street credit, and also making sure that they understand that we're not here to sell them. And so that getting them to talk is then the next thing, right? As Del has probably mentioned, because their time is important, right? Usually they may not be used to talking as much, right? Because people are trying to sell them a lot and they need to listen a lot, but getting them to the point in the conversation that then they get excited enough that they can just tell you, hey, we've been trying to solve this problem for the past 15 years, and here's where we are. And that's where the gold starts, flowing, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, it took us a few iterations to get there, basically. Yeah.
And you also kind of just teed into one thing I'd like to dive into a little bit with you, Isar, is one of the things I often hear from people, and I've tried to work with many people on finding their customer and talking to their customer, doing those customer interviews, doing those customer discovery, is almost invariably the first question I always get asked is, well, how do I find my customer? And you kind of teed that up a little bit when you talked about, doing that reach out through, like the DOE program managers and being able to kind of use that, backbone in other products and projects you've worked on that were maybe not leaning more towards that kind of DOE solution. What is like the one piece of advice you would give somebody that is starting customer discovery on how do you actually find your customer and how do you make them willing to even have a conversation with you at the start?
Yeah, that's a great question. What has worked for us, what has not worked for us is to write a general purpose email and say, hey, we're company XYZ making ABC, and we're going to make it cheaper, faster, and better, and it'll be great for you to have a look at our product. That will not work, and we've made that mistake and we tried it and it didn't work, right? But what has worked for us and is in the past is, instead of like pitching our technology to a program manager that we want them that we've never talked to, right? That we just want their attention at first sight. Instead of pitching our technology, is have a one-liner about the tech. Yeah, it's cool. We can make it happen. Everybody knows that. And then go into the details of who the end customers can be. Anything that has not been uh, publicly available or published in the call for proposal. Right. So that will get the program manager's attention right away, because now we're asking something that not a lot of people are asking. We're not asking about technical challenge, or we're not asking about our approach, because their answer would be, oh yeah, your approach makes sense. Go ahead and write a proposal for it. Because they would assume that yes, we have smart people that are going to make it happen. So does many other companies that have that. So detailed questions about the end user, is this, if it's for, and I'm not very familiar with the defense world, but it could be that the advice that I've gotten is that, hey, figure out exactly which component within that component. This is Army, Air Force. If it's Air Force, is it like something that needs to be a widget that somebody's going to need to carry? Is it going to be part of an infrastructure? And so the end users of the tech, its sensor that you're making, for example, who will it be? For us, for DOE, is it a national lab that's going to buy it? Is it a university that's going to buy it? Is it like every household in America that's going to buy it? And then run those assumptions by the program manager. It's okay to not know those, but we have some assumptions on those and say, hey, we think that this would be interesting for XYZ population. Does that make sense? Or is that one of the program goals potentially? Or it could also cover these adjacent types, and I think that customer discovery interaction, running your hypothesis by them essentially will get their attention enough that they will be willing to have a conversation or connect. And in the past, they've done it. They've connected us with people in their system that know more about these titles or topics, and they were able to give us some golden nuggets essentially, and then put all of that in the proposal. I think that's the key to if you're writing a proposal to get funding for this, hard tech idea. All of this should go in there and say, hey, we did customer discovery, and here's the narrative that we have. A couple of paragraphs about who we talked to and potential end users that could come out of this. And so that's a good place to capture all that. Yeah.
And I really like that you highlighted that, Izar, because that was one of the things that I brought up earlier was really make use of that network of networks. Thanks to the highly digitally connected world we live in, you never know who people that are connected to. And, just start with that wide net and go, hey, do you know anybody in this area? You do? Great. Can you connect them? Or, oh, you don't? Do you know somebody that might know somebody in that area? And I think you highlighted that really well, and how, NALU actually went through that process and really utilized it for your benefit and, just the overall benefit of your company.
Yes. And that never hurts. That's a question you can always ask. If somebody doesn't have time for you, or their information may be interesting but not as complete, and people are willing to help, believe it or not, because customer discovery is not something that anybody gets paid to do and get an interview conversation with you. So, but there's a lot of good souls out there, and people generally get interested and excited when somebody's trying to innovate in an area. I would say 90% of the population, as much as they're busy and everybody's doing their thing, they will give you the time to do that. And even if they can't, there are people that don't answer emails, period, and we've got a lot of those, so don't give up. We did go through, our course program with NASA a couple of times and, interviewed, people and companies. And you're right, at the end of each conversation, the question that we ask is, okay, who else do you think we can talk to? And then they would say some names, and then sometimes they volunteer to even put us in touch, which is even better than a cold email, So yeah.
And we kind of want to wrap up here because I want to leave it time for other people to have questions. But that kind of utilizing that framework of always finding out if there's someone else you could talk to. Would you say that's like one of the key things that you would leave people with, or is there a more overarching and pressing thing that you would like to make others aware of about kind of the customer discovery process that y'all learned throughout, your struggles, your wins, your heartaches, your heartbreaks, your, challenges, your roadblocks, everything like that?
I think the most important thing is having an open mind here, right? I am a technical person, so I really love my technical ideas, but that's an opportunity for me to get a sounding board and, just put myself back in a lane that, hey, is this really going to work or not? Who's going to pay for it at the end of the day? How much are they willing to pay for it? How can I get this funded? And then what's going to be the market for it eventually? So, it's a humbling experience, and everybody needs to go in there with an open mind, and it's a great opportunity to learn and grow, actually. So once you overcome the barrier.
And I really like that point because, one thing I often tell people, the biggest thing about being an entrepreneur is resilience. It's like being in a prize fight with Mike Tyson and you've never stepped in the boxing ring before. You are going to get punched in the mouth. And it's
Yeah,
about dusting yourself off, picking yourself up, and getting back in the fight. And I think you highlighted that perfectly.
well said. Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, if you want to hang on for just a couple more minutes, Izar, I'm going to run through a couple more slides and then want to leave it up to anybody that's in the chat to kind of have questions for either, you about Neilu's pathway or me. So give me 1 second to finish off slides and then we will open it back up for questions. But I am going to finish off our little bit of our presentation here. So a couple final thoughts on, just customer discovery and this entire process. Again, your customer really is the key to your operations. You want to know as much about them and the environment they operate in as possible. Kind of at the heart of it, no information is worthless information. Even things that you go, well, that doesn't help me right now. It may help you in the future. It may paint a more, complete picture for you. It may, cross some of those T's and dot some of those I's or draw that line between those two things that you thought were entirely disparate. Remember, innovation comes up at the most inopportune moments, and it just happens when things click. And you're going to find that very similar with this entire customer process is things that you didn't think actually fit together. All of a sudden, you're going to have that light bulb moment. And it could be about things that you went, well, they told me this, but that's worthless to me. I don't need to think about that, or I don't need to pay attention to that. So that's why it's so key to, keep good notes, keep good, data repositories about all this stuff, keep good information about what people have told you. Because, and even as, Isar talked about, listen to your customers. They are telling you what they actually need. They're telling you things that need to happen. They're telling you what your idea needs to be able to deliver to them. So don't walk in with those preconceived notions and you're just going to validate things that you already know. Because you can always guarantee the things that you think you know, there is no better way to get that entirely turned on its head than to walk into a customer meeting and go, well, I know you have this problem. They go, well, that doesn't affect me. What are you going to do from there? So don't walk in and listen to them. Kind of find out more and be that open end, that open mind, and just be excited to learn more because that excitement is going to come through and that enthusiasm about, I want to solve this, but I need to know about it will actually, lead to better connection points and better, relationships and partnerships in the future. And as always, want to highlight the fact that, the state of Hawaii has a really great SBIR assistance program through Cindy and HTVC, and they have matching grants of up to 50% on phase 1, phase 2, and even, those GSA style phase 3 awards. They just really provide that knowledge base. HTVC allows for people to come and hear me talk about, different aspects of SBIR, or, that reimbursement for proposal assistance. So do not hesitate to reach out to Cindy. She was CC'd on all the emails that go out about these. So when you get the email about the recording or the slides or anything like that, Cindy will be on there. And just talk to Cindy. Do the entire customer discovery process with her. Find out what HTVC does and find out how it can help you make your business stronger and make your business more successful. But so next session is going to be August 14th. We're going to talk about that kind of phase 2 transition. So moving between phase 1 and phase 2, expanding upon that rampway to a commercial product, and particularly those kind of business scaling things, because you're going to find a lot more kind of scale up activities in a phase 2 than you would do in a phase 1. So how do you actually write around that? What do you need to focus on? And now we're going to leave time for some questions. So if you have questions for me, questions for Isar about NALU, what they went through, their process, or even questions for Cindy, go ahead and unmute yourself or drop them in the chat. I'm going to stop the screen share while we do that. There are no questions. As always, want to thank people for joining us, and also thank you so much, Isar, for being able to come in here and talk about NALU and talk about y'all's journey. You gave some really, really great information about that entire process, and it's always great for people to hear it from the person that has walked a mile in their shoes or 1,000 miles in their shoes, rather than a dude like me that just goes, well, here's some really good things to know about. And thank you, as always, Cindy, too, for helping to put this series on.
Thank you, guys. This is another great workshop.
We will see y'all next time.